All right, so let's check out your Chapter 7 homework. This is problem number 1, and they're going to be using the periodic method. And you'll notice they've given you for the month of July, all the inventory that they both bought and sold. They've got the units, and they've got the unit cost for each of these. So again, this is for the month of July. They've got the periodic inventory system, and what they want us to do is calculate the cost of goods available for sale, ending inventory, and cost of goods sold if they use either FIFO, LIFO, or weighted average cost. And you can see these are the answers, but let's go through and show you the methods. We'll start with the FIFO, and I'll just kind of page this down here. And you'll notice again with FIFO, again, here's just kind of like a summary. You've got the beginning inventory, 2,000 at 40. Then you had purchases of 6 at 44, and then 8 at 50. So again, this is just a summary of the order that they bought their inventory. So they got 16,000 units at a total cost of 744,000. Now, let me page back up and let me show you this. So if you look at what happened, they have a sale on the 5th, the 17th, and the 27th. And if you add these up, that's 1,000 plus 3 is 4,000. Plus 5, that would be what, 9,000 units. So they got 9,000 units of inventory sales, and so we'll need to take that into consideration. So it's a page down here. So if you'll notice, this is kind of some basic ideas here. So we know that if we have 16,000 units and they sold 9,000 units, therefore there must be 7,000 units left in ending inventory. So if you start with FIFO, that's probably the easiest one to get. So if we've got 7,000 units left, and we know it's first in, first out, that means that for LIFO, you would have sold the 2,000 units, the 6,000 units, that's 8, and then you would have sold 1,000 units from this pool. That would leave 7,000 units at 50. That would be your ending inventory. So hopefully that's pretty easy to get, and that's an easy one. Now, the cost of goods sold, again, you're going to take it from the first units in. So 2,000 at 40, that's the first pool you're going to get cost out. Then you've got 6,000 units at 44, so 2 and 6 is 8, all right, at 44. And then you're going to take 1,000 units out of this pool. There's the 1. So you multiply these out. That would give you your cost of goods sold, again, of 394,000. Now, under LIFO, it's going to be just the opposite. Remember, last in, first out. So remember, we've got 7,000 units left of inventory. So we know that 7, we know we're going to have 2,000 units at 40, because last in, first out, you don't touch the beginning inventory. And then you'll have 5,000 units from this pool. So they're showing you that right here. So ending inventory would be 2,000 at 40. And then 5,000 at 44, so 2 and 5, there's your 7,000 units. You'd have ending inventory at 300,000. And then for your cost of goods sold, again, remember you're going backwards, so you take the 8,000 at 50, that one gets costed out first, and then 1,000 out of this pool, which they're showing you right there at 44. So these two pools under LIFO would give you cost of goods sold of 144,000. Now, for the weighted average cost, you simply take the 744 divided by 16. It's 46.50 per unit, and then you just multiply that by the ending inventory units and the units sold, respectively, to get both the ending inventory and the cost of goods sold. And then, of course, up here, they go ahead and they put the summary. Notice that everything in the first row is the same. The total cost is not going to change. And then you can just kind of go back and reference how the differences would be with ending inventory and cost of goods sold. Notice that your weighted average is always going to be for ending inventory and cost of goods sold. Weighted average will always be between LIFO and FIFO in terms of the totals. All right. All right, so that's my comments on number 1 of 8. Let's check out the second one. And this one's going to be a lower of cost or market. And notice it says the Jewel Food had the following inventory items on hand at the end of the year. We've got necklaces and bracelets. Here's a quantity, there's the cost, and then there's the value. Notice, remember, lower cost or market. As long as cost is lower than market, you don't have to worry about doing anything. So it says determine the lower cost of a market net realized, cost of market NRV net realizable value per unit, and the total amount that should be reported on the balance sheet for each item of inventory. So again, here's your lower cost of market. So notice this is the 70 for the necklaces, and for the bracelets, you've got the 40. So notice, again, that's the cost. So notice you just take the 70, this is the necklaces, times the 10, and then for the bracelets, it's going to be 40 times the 50. So this is going to be the total amount that they would report. So remember, it's the lower cost or market. So for the necklaces, the 70, which is the market, is lower than cost, so that's where they get the 70. For the bracelets, the cost was lower than market, so that's why they're using that 40. And then the total amount reported would be the 2,700. And then again, here's the calculations down below. All right, so that is it for problem 2. Let's check out problem 3. And again, on this one, they want you to solve for some of the missing information designated by the question mark. And again, since these are the answers, I'm just going to remind you of the formula that you go through to do the calculation. So remember, if you take this, remember the relationship: beginning inventory plus your purchases equals your goods available. And then, of course, if you subtract out your ending inventory, that would then give you your cost of goods sold. So whatever is the missing amount for any one of these, you would simply just plug it into this equation. And in some cases, you might have to work it backwards. Now, for the inventory turnover, remember, you just got to plug it into the formula. So right here, down here, the 365 divided by the turnover gives you the days to sell. And so they're kind of right here kind of telling you if you have to solve that one backwards. So remember, it's your cost of goods sold divided by your inventory, and the inventory gives you your inventory turnover, and days to sell is again 365. They're telling you to use 365 right up here for your days to sell. So again, this is just a problem where to back into everything, you're just going to have to plug it into your equation, and either going to be adding or subtracting. And then down here, they're just kind of giving you the basic idea of some of these explanations as well. I like to write my formulas vertically. All right, so that's my comments on this one. Again, if you have any questions or problems as you work it, again, just give me an email. I'll be glad to give you some more help with it. All right, so that's my comments on number 3. Let's check out number 4. And on number 4, again, we've got some more inventory problems. And again, on this one, again, we're using periodic method. And they know the sales total 240 units. So they give you our sales units of 240. And then again, we're going to go through the 3 methods, the FIFO, Lifo, and of course, weighted average methods. So we'll get goods available, units in ending inventory, and then of course the cost of goods sold. All right, so, and then of course here's the answers, but I'll go through the explanation here in a minute. So let me page down. And so here again is just kind of like a quick summary of just your beginning inventories, and they're keeping them in their respective cost pools: 120, 380, 200. Notice the cost have changed. Notice that the total cost was 65,800. And of course, if they had 700 units available and they sold 240, there must be 460 units left in ending inventory. Okay, and so that 460 is going to have to be taken from one of these pools when you do the FIFO, Lifo, weighted average. So looking again at the FIFO method, again, the 65A is going to be the same for all of them. But for your ending inventory, if you've got 460 left, we know that has to be 200 from this group and 260 from this group. Remember, you're going backwards. So you take 200 at 110 and then 260 at 90, right there. That would give you your ending inventory. And of course, you could just subtract that from your goods available. That would of course tell you your cost of goods sold. Or you could go backwards and say, well, you've got to get all the units sold, which is of the 240. So we know that would be what? 120 and 120. 120 at 80 and 120 at 90, which is showing you that individually right there to give you your cost of goods sold. Lifo, again, is just the opposite. Again, we got the same total cost. That doesn't change. But for your ending inventory, which remember we've got 460 left, it's going to come from 120 of the beginning inventory and then 340 out of the next pool. And they're showing you that right here, 120 and 340. That would give you 460. And then that would be your ending inventory. The difference there would be, of course, your cost of goods sold. If you want to do it backwards to get your individual cost of goods sold, you could just take 200 at 110, which you're doing it right there, and then another 40 from this pool at 90, right there. And that's another way you can prove that that is your cost of goods sold. For weighted average, you take the 65.8 divided by 700. They're doing that right there. 94 bucks is your average cost. And then down here, they're just showing you respectively, you just take that 94 times your ending inventory units and the cost of goods sold units, and respectively, that would give you your total cost for each of those. Okay. All right, and that's basically the explanation on that. And then here's just your answers. Part one was just for the units available and the cost. Part two is just saying what's your ending inventory units. And then part three is what I just showed you. They just want you to go ahead and put those dollar amounts that you just calculated. All right, so that's my comments on number 4. Let's check out number 5. And again, on number 5, it looks like they got a whole bunch of stuff going on here, but basically they're just, again, taking you through steps. Again, I'll show you the requirements first. You've got to get the units and cost of goods available for sale. That's one requirement. Then they want the units in the inventory. Then they want you to actually enter the cost numbers that you're going to calculate. And then at that point, they want you to do an income statement under both Lifo and Fifo. And that is what they're having you do on that one is they have one column for Fifo, Lifo, and weighted average, and you're just going to plug respectively in what you come up with. But essentially, what you compare what happens, what shows up on your income statement, and how this cost of goods sold number affects what you report as net income. And then requirement 6 is just asking you which inventory costing method minimizes income taxes. And of course, if prices are rising, Lifo would give you the lowest taxes. But most of the calculations are really coming in parts 3 and part 4. And so I just want to go down and I will show you how they're getting these. And this is very similar to the ones we've already looked at. And again, this is the periodic method. So you'll note, at least on the first one, again, this is for your calculations. They give you the total units available, and then there's the total cost. And then if they sold 12,000 units, that means that 5,500 units are left. So 12,000 units of sales. So under FIFO, to get ending inventory, first in, first out, we know we're going to have 5 and 7, 5,000 units. I'm sorry, it's ending inventory. What did I say? 12. Yeah, ending inventory is 12. So to get that, it would be the 5,000 units, first in, first out. So 5,000 units at 11, and then we would have another 7,000 units at 9, and that should give you your ending inventory. And then for your cost of goods sold, you would take, since they sold 12,000 units, I think I misspoke. The ending inventory is actually 5,500 units. So I'm sorry, it's 5,000. I think I misspoke. For the ending inventory, it's 5,500 units. So it's 5,000 units at 11, and then 500 units at 9. I don't know why I said 7. So there's your ending inventory. And then to get the cost of goods sold, which they sold 12,000 units, you would take 3,000 and then 9,000. So there's showing you that calculation right there. That would be your cost of goods sold. Lifo is just the opposite. So Lifo is last in, first out. So for your ending inventory, so that would consist of 3,000 from your beginning inventory and 2,500 units from the next pool. There's your ending inventory. The difference is cost of goods sold. Or if you just want to expense it, you have the 5,000 and the 7. That's going backwards. They're showing you that right there. to get your cost of goods sold. The weighted average, you just divide, there's your average cost per unit, and then take respectively that cost per unit times the units in ending inventory and cost of goods sold. So that's the meat of all the calculations on this. And of course, sales revenue, you have to go back and just calculate your sales revenue. It's 4,000 units at 29 and 8,000 units at 31. This is just your sales price. So 364,000, you'll need that when you go to do your income statement. So just to go back to requirements 3 and 4, these are the numbers you plug in for your cost. And then of course on requirement 4, here's the numbers you would plug in for your income statement. And notice the first row, the sales revenue should be the same for all of them. All right, that's my comments on number 5. Let's check out number 6. And again, on number 6, this is another write-down, lower cost to market. You'll notice we've got airflow, blister, Kulu night, Dudsley. We've got the quantities, we've got the unit cost, and then the value. So remember, as long as cost is less than market, you don't have to do anything. So for the first one, there's nothing to do. For blister, since the market is lower than cost, we'll have to write that down by $2. Same thing for cool night, that's the market's gone down, so that's $5 write down. And then for Dudsley, nothing because the cost is less than market. So the only adjustments on this one would be these first 2. So they're showing you in this case, essentially, they're having you line it up. And like I just told you, the only 2 that you have to write down are these 2, which is there's the difference times the quantity. So the total write down would be 325. And then they just tell you how much you're going to be increasing cost of goods sold, which essentially is by that amount of write down. And then of course, it says compute the amount that they would report on the ending inventory. And they're just showing you this calculation right down here. And so they're just essentially saying if your total cost, initial cost was $5,465 and you wrote down 325, the 5140 is what you would essentially have left over in inventory at this point in time. All right, that's number 6. And then on number 7, at this point, I believe we've seen just about every scenario. Again, this is periodic method, and they show you inventory at the beginning of at the end of the year, FIFO, LIFO. They give you the units, so there's your units. They give you the cost, and then here's the transactions in order. You've got purchases on the 9th and the 20th, and then sales on the 11th and the 27th. You get units, and then you got your cost. They want you to get the units, number of units available, the cost, and cost of goods sold. This one, it's just FIFO, LIFO, so there's no weighted average on this one. They then want the inventory turnover ratio. And then it says, does the inventory method used make a significant difference in how this plays out with your ratio? So you can see the answers right there. And here is just showing you, again, how to get your ending inventory units. So you have 80 plus 56, they sold 136 units. So 52 units is what would be left in ending inventory. And then down below, they're just showing you the calculations on how to get goods available, which is right here. Here's your goods available. Let me change my over here. 188 units at 22.22. Your ending inventory under FIFO, first in, first out, you would have had 52 units left, in this case at 16. So if you go back and kind of look at this summary right here, so if they sold, they sold 136, and essentially that would take you into that last cost pool. So the only thing that's left is this last cost pool at 16. And so that's what they're showing you that right there. So if that's your ending inventory, the difference there would then give you your cost of goods sold. And then you could also proof it right here to get that, to get the units sold of 136, that's 38 plus 50 plus 48. And they're just taking those respectively in order. All right, so that would be your FIFO numbers. And then under LIFO, notice again, last in, first out. It just goes backwards. So ending inventory, what's left over would be the 38 from beginning inventory plus the 14 in the next pool. So that would be their ending inventory. The difference would then give you your cost of goods sold. Or they could also proof it by saying last in, first out, which is 100 from this pool, and then another 36 from that pool. And that's also how you could calculate cost of goods sold. And then now here's just your calculation for ratios. You just take the cost of goods sold, divide by your average inventories under FIFO, LIFO. You can compare them, and you can see that it does make an impact in terms of FIFO, LIFO, depending which method you're using. It does make an impact of what your ratio does look like. All right, so that's my comments on this one. And I think at this point, you just have to go in and plug in the numbers once you do all the calculations. All right, and then last one, number 8. Again, here's another problem, very similar to what we've just been doing. And you'll notice we've got LIFO, weighted average first, and then they've got specific identification as well. So you just have to do the amounts available, the ending inventory, and the cost of goods sold. And then they ask you a question about which one gives you the highest gross profit. So you have to do a lot of calculations on this one. And so down below, here's just the calculations on how they get some of these. So you'll note that this is just like the summary. Notice you got your units, the cost, you've got goods sold, and ending inventory. So if you're doing ending inventory and cost of goods sold, this is the LIFO method. So remember, last in, first out for ending inventory, and we've got 2150 left. That means that, so if last in, first out, so what would essentially be left over would be 1800 from beginning inventory, and then 350 from that next layer. They're showing you that right there. So that's your ending inventory. Cost of goods sold, again, you're going last in, first out, so they go 12, you kind of go backwards, so 1200 right there, plus the 2150, which is the next pool. Multiply those out, and you get your cost of goods sold. Weighted average, you of course would take the 341 divided by 550, and they get $62 as your average. And then you just multiply that respectively by your ending inventory units and your cost of goods sold units. Let me move this down. FIFO, same thing, first in, first out. So what's left in inventory from FIFO, you would have the 1200 and the 950 that's left. That'd be your ending inventory. And then of course, when you go to do your cost of goods sold, you start with beginning inventory at 50, and then you have enough in the next cost pool to cost it out to get your cost of goods sold. Specific identification. You'll know you just have to track these individually, and they're showing you specifically what's left over. And this one's a little tricky because they're showing you, essentially how you come up with some of these numbers in terms of, they give you the 3 asterisks right here, and you can follow this to tell you exactly how they're coming up with the specific numbers that are left for both ending inventory and for your cost of goods sold. And if you just kind of follow this, you just have to specifically identify exactly which units come from which cost pool. That one's a little more tricky because you have to really watch it, because you're not doing any sort of this periodic or perpetual or just any weighted average. You have to specifically identify which units are being sold. If I page back up, of course, you can see it, go back to the original problem. Here's again what they're telling you in terms of what they sold out. All right, so that's your specific identification. And then of course, you can compare which one has the highest cost of goods sold. Because on this one, I think they have a couple questions about which one has the highest profit and which one gives you the lowest income taxes. And then you just have to compare individually, respectively, the cost of goods sold under each of these, cost of goods sold. And then you can compare, of course, whichever one has the highest cost of goods sold would, of course, give you the lowest taxes. And that's essentially how it works. All right, so if you run into any problems when you're doing specific identification or anything else in any of these problems, just let me know. I'll be glad to give you some more assistance with that. And I think that would wrap it up on my comments to assist you with your Chapter 7 homework.